My dear friend, some dreams don't feel like dreams. They arrive like a memory or a second chance. And when you wake up, your heart remembers something your mind can't explain. Sometimes, in the quietest hours, when the world softens and the sky feels closer, our hearts drift to the ones we've lost. And around Father's Day, that ache feels sharper, doesn't it? If you're listening tonight and missing your dad, or wishing for one more moment, one more word you're not alone, maybe you're holding a kind of love that has nowhere to go. We carry them in memories, in gestures, in the quiet things we never got to say. I don't dream of him often. It's usually just the sound of his shoes in a hallway I haven't walked in years, or the scent of his aftershave woven into the breeze of a summer morning. But last night was different. Last night, I dreamt I had brunch with my Father in heaven, not in some pearly polished version of heaven, but in a garden that looked like the kind he would have built himself. If heaven had a hardware store and a Saturday afternoon, there were worn stone paths and wild rosemary hedges, mismatched chairs and a wooden table already set. The sun filtered through the trees like it knew it was invited. Wind chimes tinkled from a distance, and a golden retriever snoozed lazily in a patch of sunlight near the gate. The air smelled of jasmine, fresh bread, and something else, nostalgia, maybe. And he was there. Not the version from the hospital bed, the one from before, with his sleeves rolled up, laugh lines intact. His hands looked the same, rough, warm, honest. "Sit," he said, like he'd just brewed the coffee. I sat across from him, unsure whether to cry or laugh, or reach across the table and touch his wrist, just to be sure. My heart beat so loudly it felt like it might shake the table. He just smiled. "You've grown into yourself, you know, even with the sadness, maybe especially because of it." That's when I broke. I told him everything. How I didn't get to say goodbye. How I missed his last day. How life had barreled forward while I carried that guilt like a stone in my chest. I told him about the way grief reshaped the holidays, and how I sometimes paused at the foot of his favorite chair, expecting to see him there. He nodded gently, like he already knew, and then he said, "Regret is proof of love, don't punish yourself with it." And somehow, my shoulders dropped for the first time in years. Then came brunch. There were scones and fruit and tea that never cooled. A pitcher of orange juice beaded with dew. A bowl of blueberries that tasted sweeter than I remembered. A stack of his old favourite pancakes, slightly burned around the edges. The garden hummed with a kind of peacefulness I'd forgotten was possible. He leaned back in his chair and began sharing things, not just memories, but lessons. He reached for another scone, tore it gently, then said, "Life isn't always packaged the way we want it. It happens in its own terms, in its own time. It doesn't ask our permission, but sometimes the plans it has for us are better than the ones we had for ourselves." Quiet truths he'd never had time to say. Or maybe I'd never slowed down enough to hear. He looked at me with a twinkle in his eyes and continued, "Despite the trials and tribulations of life, it is beautiful." He said it simply as he broke a muffin in half and offered me a piece. "Even the hard parts," he added, "are stitched into something good. Not perfect, but beautiful still. I thought about all the messy moments, the heartbreaks, the bills, the things we lost, and the people we loved too briefly. And I saw what he meant. Life wasn't flawless, but it was breathtaking, even in its imperfection. He looked me squarely in the eye and said seriously, "Always do your duty, even when no one's watching, even when it's thankless. Do the thing your conscience can live with. That's how you stay whole." He buttered his toast like it was a ritual, sacred in its simplicity. He told me about small choices, paying debts, returning borrowed books, planting trees he'd never see grow. The quiet dignity of doing the right thing, especially when it's hard. As if he was afraid that the mood was getting to be too serious, he smiled and said, "You can do a lot of things silently. There is no need to announce everything you do, especially if it is to help someone." He chuckled at this one. I've seen people turn charity into performance, but the best kind of kindness leaves no echo. It just lands quietly and changes something. He told me how he used to fix the neighbor's mailbox without saying a word. How he'd leave sandwiches for the man who slept by the church steps. How no one needed to know because it wasn't about being seen. It was about doing what needed to be done. He sipped his tea. I felt like I was watching a monk in overalls. Reaching across the table, he held my hands and said, "My dear child, you're stronger than you think, even on the days you can't feel it, especially on those days. You keep showing up. You keep trying. That's strength." His voice got softer then, like he knew I'd needed to hear that more than anything else. He said he saw how I kept going after the world changed. How I worked, loved, and kept hope, even when the weight felt unbearable. Strength doesn't always roar, he said. Sometimes it just whispers, "Try again tomorrow." He looked toward the sky and then at me and said softly, "You don't have to carry everything forever. Not the guilt, not the mistakes. Let them go. Forgive yourself. Forgive me too." I did. Right there, in that garden, and when I looked up, the sun had shifted, casting dappled light through the trees. The wind had picked up just slightly, stirring the petals of the flowers beside us. I wished I could bottle the moment, keep it on my shelf. When it was time to leave, I didn't feel panic, just a kind of hush, like a book closing softly after the last page. He stood, took my hand, looked at me like he always had, like I was his whole world. We walked the garden path slowly. He stopped by the rosemary bush and plucked a sprig, tucking it into my palm. "For memory," he said, "and for meals. You'll wake up now," he said. "Will I see you again?" I asked. "You already do," he replied. "Every time you choose love, every time you choose to stay." And then the garden faded. The warmth of the sun lingered on my face even as the real one rose outside my window. I woke up with tears on my pillow and peace in my chest. It had been a dream, but the lessons, they were real. And maybe that's enough to carry me through this Father's Day. To love what was, to live what is, and to dream again of what still might be. And if you're still awake, maybe that's okay, because sometimes sleep waits for us to remember. Maybe tonight you remembered a father's laugh, a quiet lesson, or the way someone once made you feel safe. And maybe tomorrow you'll carry those pieces forward into kindness, into courage, into whatever comes next. This Father's Day and every day after, may you find peace in what was and grace in what still remains. Thank you for listening and sharing this memory with me. May you remember your dad with love this Father's Day.